Do you guys remember that old mystery from 2006 to 2008 and beyond, where all of these people, thousands and thousands of people in the early 2000s, were reporting seeing this man in their dreams, showing up in their dreams? And back in the early 2000s, a website was set up that was hardly noticeable. Nobody, it was just a tiny, primitive website, which I set my Extreme Reality Check website up in 2004. So I remember there were no options. Everything was very primitive. And that's the way this was. Just a very simple website for people to report their dreams and sketches if they have seen anybody who looks like this in their dreams recently. And this is an actual screenshot of that website from 2008. Now it has since been bought by another company and they've revamped the website, and there's this whole cover story that goes along with this. But this is what it originally looked like back then. At the same time, these flyers started showing up at bus stops and on poles and everywhere in cities all around the world. Not just cities all around the United States, cities all around the world. On the last full version video that I put up, the part 2 of Titan Point, I got this comment, and this is so interesting. And I can't tell from your handle, from your YouTube name, if you're a he or a she. I can't tell your pronouns. I can't tell. So I don't mean any disrespect, so I'm just going to say they. They said, "Hey, do you guys remember that one story back in the day about, quote, have you ever dreamed this man? Have you guys noticed that that guy looks like Jordy Rose from D-Wave? Weird, huh?" And I replied, "That's so weird. I started a file on that last year. I thought the exact same thing. And that whole creepy scenario with the flyers and the phone number reaches into these experiments, even strange cults or, quote, private schools in secluded areas. Maybe I'll drag that file out and do a video on it, yada, yada, yada." So that's what I'm doing here. This isn't part 3 of Titan Point. The full version of that is coming to wrap up that series. But some people like these shorter videos better anyway, so I like to sprinkle a couple of these shorter ones in between my long full version videos. And this ties in to the whole Titan Point series. Well, everything we talk about on this channel, but it'll be a nice segue with these little ones. What do you think the odds are that all of those years ago, decades ago, in fact, that this dream study or dream survey, sort of viral marketing campaign dream survey, was launched? And the guy that was showing up in people's dreams, or they were asking people, have you seen him in your dreams? He happens to look exactly like Jordy Rose, the founder of D-Wave. Yeah, D-Wave, as in delta waves, like delta brain waves, which just happen to be the frequency that your brain is resonating in during sleep. And D-Wave just happened to be founded by Geordie Rose right before this mysterious viral marketing sleep survey or dream survey came out. And of course, the D-Wave computers are all done in conjunction with Google and NASA. And D-Wave's 2X quantum computer was installed at the Quantum Artificial Intelligence Lab at the NASA Research Center with their new Pegasus chip. Remember how we were talking about Project Pegasus and Project Looking Glass? And one of Geordie Rose's co-founders in D-Wave is Haig Ferris. Haig Ferris is a founding chairman and board member of D-Wave Systems, the Vancouver-based company that raised $130 million from investors including Jeff Bezos and the investment arm of the CIA. Now, if you just stumbled across this video because you're interested in the This Man mystery, and have you seen this man in your dream, or are you having strange dreams, the 2015 mystery, please stick around. But if you don't understand why I keep saying like the word NASA and CIA and all of this to do with D-Wave and why this guy looks exactly like Geordie Rose, if you're feeling kind of lost, it's because we're just coming out of a series on this channel about NASA and these frequency experiments on humans and how Operation Paperclip brought over Nazi scientists like Werner von Braun, Arthur Rudolph, and Hermann Oberth, who basically ended up in foundational roles in NASA. These were the main rocket scientists of NASA. And there were nearly 1,000 other German scientists that we brought over into our military-industrial complex. But I don't really want to take up any more time in this short video rehashing any of that information. I want this to be about the This Man mystery. So if you're interested in all of that, these two videos here on the screen are what I'm talking about, Titan Point 1 and Titan Point 2. Okay, back to this man. Have you been dreaming about this man? So Geordie Rose founded D-Wave in 1999, and in 2005 he was working with JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And just in case everybody doesn't know, Jack Parsons founded the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He was one of the principal founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Now, Jack Parsons was a known Satanist, a known occultist. And again, that is not a conspiracy theory. That's common knowledge. He wrote books about it. You can go back and find the tapes of him doing these weird rituals and chants when he was working on his rocket projects. It's all available. This is Wikipedia. That's mainstream. Right here, Babylon Working. Babylon Working was a series of magic ceremonies or rituals performed from January to March of 1946 by author, pioneer rocket fuel scientist, and occultist Jack Parsons and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. They were roommates. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard of the Scientology cult, they were roommates. And they performed these rituals about raising Babylon. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this is going to play into the This Man mystery when we get into where these phone numbers were traced to. Phone numbers found on these flyers asking people to report their strange dreams. Here's a picture of L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons together when they were younger. And that Babylon Rising ceremony or Babylon Working ceremony, that series of rituals they were performing came from previous books written by Aleister Crowley. And everybody knows Aleister Crowley was an open Satanist, an open occultist into all of these different sexual perversions and the forbidden words that we're not allowed to say here on YouTube. Most people in the know agree that JPL doesn't really even stand for Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It stands for Jack Parsons Laboratory, because everything that JPL is involved in, just like D-Wave, doesn't have to do with rocket fuel. It has nothing to do with rocket fuel. It has to do with these sort of occult DARPA experiments and projects. Space in the sense of quantum dimensions, like D-Wave is a quantum computer. The spiritual realms, the other dimensions. So it's space in that sense. But of course, they lie to us about the very nature of space, the very nature of where we even are. So anytime you see JPL involved in all of these projects, like the Pegasus chip, the creation of the Pegasus chip for D-Wave, and you wonder why this has nothing to do with jet propulsions or rocket fuel. This is why. It's the continuation of this occult sort of DARPA subset of projects called Babylon Rising or Babylon Working. The Bible calls it the Beast System or Mystery Babylon. Okay. Like I said, I say all of that because I don't want it to seem far-fetched when we start talking about the cult connections to the This Man phenomenon and the flyers and the sleep study or the dream survey. So thus far, we know this. This man in the dream survey just happens to look exactly like Geordie Rose, the founder of D-Wave, who worked with in 2005 Jack Parsons, the Satanists, the occultists, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So he founds D-Wave in 1999. He's working with JPL in 2005. In 2006 begins the phenomenon Ever Dream This Man. And allegedly it begins in a psychiatrist's office. Now I've heard all of the debunked stuff, and I know Wikipedia put up a page saying story of the hoax, and they got these pictures. Oh, look, it looks like this guy, it looks like this guy. Yet they failed to mention how much he looks like this guy. They go out of their way not to mention that he looks like this guy. And in fact, you go back to the early years of this website, and the guy who produced the website gave interviews, and they reported on this as a real phenomenon. It wasn't until years later that the cover story was created and the backstory, and someone came in and bought the guy's website and created all this. So I'll get to debunking the debunkers here in a little bit. But here's the original story as it was posted on the original website back from 2006 to 2008.
The origin of this man comes from a drawing sketched out by a mental patient of a well-known psychiatrist in New York, January 2006. The patient told their psychiatrist that they had had recurring dreams where the man in this picture would appear to them and give them advice. Soon thereafter, another patient of a psychiatrist remarked that they had also seen visions of this man in their dreams but had no memory of ever meeting him in real life. This prompted the psychiatrist to send out copies of the portrait to his colleagues, who also had patients suffering from recurring dreams. To his surprise, 4 more patients then came forward claiming they had also been visited by the man while sleeping, and all of them eerily referred to him as this man. After these initial findings, a website addressed thisman.org claimed over 2,000 people worldwide had come forward also confirming they had seen visions of this man.
Now, these are just a couple of the dreams that were reported on the original website. Quote, I dreamt this man was in my mirror watching me, saying nothing, and he was wearing glasses. He never moved the entire time I saw him. He was like a statue, so still. So that's one of the more benign ones. But yeah, he was just watching them, and he was wearing glasses that time. I dreamt of this man when I was in the 10th grade. He hasn't been in any recurring dreams, just one very memorable and terrifying dream. In my dream, I was stuck in a room sitting on a stool. A few feet away from me, there was a television set. I was visited by 2 men I had never seen before, in parentheses, not this man, and they both attacked me. I woke up covered in sweat and tears and I was screaming. I somehow fell asleep, then found myself back in the room. I started screaming and crying. Then this man showed up on the screen. I begged him not to harm me. He didn't change his blank expression or speak. He slit my throat and I woke up. But this scenario of being attacked and tortured and all of that is eerily reminiscent of what Donald Marshall said happens during his REM sleep. Many of you know who Donald Marshall is, but if you don't, he was an alleged whistleblower that came out around 2011, 2012, I think it was, and said that there was this underworld, these cloning labs, and that they had technology to pull you out of your body during REM sleep. And then they would take you into what amounted to hell. Whether that was virtual reality, we don't know, but to him it was very real. And during REM sleep, they would take him down there. They would do things like sexual abuse, just assault, and other types of violent abuse, much like the account of this man, what she says happened to her. Here's another dream experience of this man. I have never had homosexual relationships or even fantasies, but I dream about having sexing, they probably mean sex, about having sexing with this man all the time. So even though for some reason on YouTube, most of the most popular videos with the most views, millions of views about the this man phenomenon and are you having strange dreams flyers, they speak about it as if all of the dreams are, very benign, when in fact a lot of them are very violent and perverse. Some of them are benign. Some of them even report them as good, like they're being courted. This guy shows up in their dreams and brings them flowers and jewelry and, takes them to beaches and stuff like that. Other ones are very neutral, sort of like astral projection experiences. I have always had this dream of flying in the sky over my city and observing my friends from up there. Since I moved to another house, I started meeting this man while flying. Not every single time I have the dream about flying, but often enough. There's some argument about whether REM sleep would be considered in the delta brainwave frequency because it's a spectrum. It's not always defined the same way. Some people say it's between 1 and 3 hertz, but here on Wikipedia, they define it as a broader spectrum of 0.5 all the way up to 4 hertz. Delta waves are associated with deep sleep stages 3 and 4. So, I mean, it's a spectrum. And there's nothing saying that they are only messing with our minds in a very specific, narrow frequency range. But right here, this is interesting. Delta waves, like other brain waves, are recorded with an EEG and are usually associated with the deep stage 3 of NREM sleep, also known as slow wave sleep, SWS. SWS. I'm sure it's just another coincidence that SWS is exactly what they call the sentient world simulation, this artificial dimension that we're always talking about, the virtual reality. And this is straight from Purdue. Here's the paper from purdue.edu. DoD military simulation creates a sentient world, right there. Sentient world simulation, SWS. U.S. government develops a matrix-like world simulation, SWS. Sentient world simulation and NSA surveillance, SWS. This is exactly what we're talking about in the Titan Point series. So I'm sure it's just all another big coincidence that that's the same exact name they use for delta wave frequency range, D wave, SWS, slow wave sleep, SWS. So I think it's pretty clear where I'm going with this. I don't believe that this was a hoax or an urban legend or any of that. I believe that this was an experimental phase, a beta test phase on the general public that happened back in the early 2000s. Now, I don't doubt that there was some sort of viral marketing involved in trying to retrieve the data because they were broadcasting from their end, and they needed to know from our end how many people are receiving this broadcast in your delta brainwave frequency in your dreams. Are you seeing what we are broadcasting? Are you receiving it? And if so, who is receiving it? What demographic is receiving it? And how far is our broadcast reaching? Is it reaching a small radius, like broadcasting from AM/FM radio, or is it reaching worldwide, like you can broadcast from shortwave radios and talk to someone, across the ocean? So I think that's what this was. This was an effort to gather data from a beta test to see how far reaching their broadcasts were and get all of, as much information as they could. And we've seen them launch these psychological operations, or viral marketing, if you will, since the inception of the internet. And I believe that's exactly what this was. And it was very effective. People still talk about it today. And that's precisely why they've had to go back and create this cover story and cover it up. Because in light of all the technology we know today, 20 years ago, D-Wave and quantum computers and Elon Musk's neural lace interface and Ray Kurzweil's transcendent man, where they're openly talking about how they're going to move us into these artificial dimensions through all of this nanotech that this smart dust, they're going to sprinkle all over everything. Nobody had ever heard of that 20 years ago, back in the early 2000s. So there was no need to have any cover up. But as people started to wake up and see what's going on, now they've gone back. This is the Wikipedia page. They've gone back and say, story of the hoax. They do admit, though, if you go back to the Vice magazine articles, it says that the creator, when interviewed by Vice magazine for an article that took the myth seriously, thus making Natella answer the questions as if for real, explained that he first dreamed this man before he was aware of who he really was. And then he created this website and all of this. So they do admit that all of the news coverage and the articles about this phenomenon before the 2010 cover story was launched, that they took it seriously. All of the articles were about this was a real phenomenon going on. So there's a lot of ambiguity around that. But like I said, a viral marketing campaign, and whether this guy was working for CIA, I don't deny any of that. That, to me, that doesn't make it a hoax or anything like that. It just makes it not what they tell us it is. So he claimed that it was all real back when he launched it. He did all of these interviews and everything. But then all of a sudden he changed his story in 2010. In May of 2010, Ghost House Pictures came in and bought thisman.org. And they announced that they were writing and directing a film about this man. So this is when he sold out in 2010. And that's when the narrative changed. And even the creator of the website changed his story. However, a 2010 post from the website Kook, which Natella became a partner of while this man was gaining traction, and a published paper he wrote in 2012 titled Viral K Marketing, finally confirmed that this man was not real, but rather a stunt. So there's the creation of the cover story. It was in 2010 and 2012 that they came in and created all this backstory that, no, never mind, nothing to see here, keep moving, there's nothing to see here. So they tried to handle it. Wikipedia put up a page, story of the hoax, and they decided to tell everybody this was all just viral marketing for a movie. So, but if you go over to the movie, you can see that there never was a movie. There's no information. It's because this project is categorized as in development, for like 20 years, 15 years. The data is only available on the Pro, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they list a few operatives and stuff so you can check it out. But no, there was never a movie, and that's all just a cover story. Because as I've already stated, in my humble opinion, this was a top secret DARPA project. And really, it only appears to be sort of phase one in the data collection. From 2012 to 2015, this all just seemed to be, okay, that's an urban legend. Nobody heard anything else about it. But then in 2015, this same sort of dream study reemerged. In 2015, these flyers started showing up. Have you been having strange dreams? The Willamette Valley Dream Survey is investigating a recent spike in bizarre, unexplainable dreams. If you have been experiencing any unusual dream activity, you can help by reporting a summary, and it gives a number. And at the same time, posts like this started showing up all over Reddit and Discord, talking about these strange flyers found all around Portland and throughout Oregon. Hence the Willamette Valley Dream Survey. The Willamette Valley is a 150-mile long valley in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. The Willamette River flows the entire length of the valley and is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. It is home to approximately 70% of Oregon's population, including the 6 largest cities in the state: Portland, Eugene, Salem, Gresham, Hillsborough, and Beaverton. 2 more dream surveys also showed up in Utah and in Canada in 2020, using almost the exact same format, poster and everything. But I'll mention those at the end, not just because they're in chronological order, but also because I'm not sure that they are related to these 2. But the Willamette Valley Dream Survey and the This Man Dream Survey, I do believe are related. Here is the recording that you get when you call the number on the Willamette Dream Survey flyers. And surprisingly, it was still active all the way up until 2020 as of the recording of this video. It turns out to be a Google number, and it's just linked to a voicemail, just to an answering machine. You don't get any text response, you get no response at all. It's just a place where you can call and leave a report.
Thank you for calling the Willamette Valley Dream Survey. Please leave a detailed account of your dream after the tone. Transcripts or audio from your report may be duplicated in other media.
Here's where it takes a weird turn. A Google search finds no other references to the Willamette Valley Dream Survey, so it's not anything public. If it was just a public dream survey linked to a university, it would be public. But instead, no, there's absolutely no mention of it. It's a total secret, top secret, no mention of Willamette Dream Survey other than people talking about these mysterious flyers. The number has been in the past affiliated with a summer camp operated by the German language immersion program, Sophie Scholl Schule. Now, a lot of people who do research on this act as if this is a name, Sophie Schule. But in fact, that's just German again for school or college, university, program, or programming. So this Sophie School still operates as of right now in Beaverton, Portland, and Corvallis. But a school official said that the number was a Google phone account that the school no longer uses. So they're denying that this is their dream survey, and they're saying they don't use that number anymore. Yet this Sophie immersion program is still operating in Willamette Valley in Beaverton, Portland, and Corvallis. If you go to the website, and it's still up, germansummercamp.org, you can see that the number has indeed changed. And on the surface, it just looks, like a normal, happy summer camp about German immersion. Here's the website, and it is a very simple format still. There's lots of pictures of the kids and some of the events. But I want to point out some of the things I found interesting. One is the use of the name Sophie School. And of course, that's because we see that name, Sophie and Sophia, again and again in all of the Antichrist New Age religions, whether it's the Mother Goddess worship or the Mother of God Madonna worship, or even Sophia, the AI, which you guys know we've done dozens and dozens of videos on. They've even founded a church saying that AI is the Godhead and singularity is God and all of that. This is their technocracy cult. So anyway, yeah, we always see that. Sophia and Sophie. Sophia means wisdom, or to them, knowledge. It's like Gnosticism. They believe that that is God. Not that wisdom is a child of God or a facet of God, but that they worship knowledge itself. So it's Sophia worship. Since we're talking about D-Wave and quantum computer and artificial intelligence experiments on the human mind, I think Sophie would be important to point out that this is a Sophie school, and Sophie Saturday School is under the umbrella of Zeitgeist Northwest. And you can see the picture of the kids. I wouldn't say those are Heil Hitlers, but they definitely are having the children all do the fist up for their group picture. And of course, we know that the fist up has, since before World War II, been the symbol of the Marxist revolution, the raised fist, communists. It's used in the CCP, it's used in the Young Communist League, and now we're seeing it all over our streets in Antifa and other Marxist movements amongst our youth. So it's interesting that they're having all of these little bitty tiny kids do the fist up for their group picture. And Sophie's school is under the umbrella of Zeitgeist Northwest. And we know that Zeitgeist is indeed a Marxist cult. They have their own literature and movies they distribute and all of it. The word Zeitgeist obviously is a German word that means the defining spirit or mood of a particular period of history. Zeitgeist is a concept from the 18th to 19th century German philosophy, meaning the spirit of the age. And this is what we're talking about, the new age, the Antichrist spirit. And that's exactly what the Zeitgeist propaganda literature says. It's anti-Christ. It's an anti-Christ. It's against Christ. It's a teaching saying that Christ is a myth, it's not real.
Okay, Alexa, who is the Lord Jesus Christ?
Jesus Christ is a fictional character.
The
The 2007 documentary movie, it asserts a number of conspiracy theory ideas, including the Christ myth theory. And this propaganda piece, this psychological operation, was aimed directly at the truth community. That's why it's cloaked in so many of these, quote, conspiracy theories like 9/11 and everything. But what it boils down to is capturing people who are onto the truth, people in the truth movement, and drawing them back around, circle back, right? Circle back around. And bring them right back to being anti-Christ and anti-Semitic, which we saw, in the Nazi and the communist movements. And it really is a powerful piece of propaganda. I wouldn't recommend watching it, in fact, unless you are well versed in the Holy Bible and in world history, and maybe watch several of these, like the Zeitgeist movie Refuted and different things like that, because it's a powerful propaganda piece, and it still has captured the hearts and minds and souls of many people in the truth community are still serving the Antichrist because of it. That's why I'm constantly showing the Bible verses, like every other video, working them in, where the Bible clearly says that the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews but are not, but do lie. And here's another one in Revelation 2. I know your tribulation and poverty and the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews but are not. They are not. It's not the Jews doing this. He says, but are the synagogue of Satan. So these are imposters. I just can't emphasize it enough because it's a honeypot trap. Zeitgeist isn't just antichrist, like getting you to serve the Antichrist and preach against Jesus Christ, but it's also a honeypot. It's a honeypot that traps people and gets them to start regurgitating all of this anti-Semitism, the same thing that Hitler taught. And you can't reason with them. Hopefully showing the Bible verses again and again and again that people believe in the Bible will please stop saying that the Jews are doing this. This is not Jews, these are Satanists. And we've done tons of at-length videos about the Sabbateans and the Frankists and, 1666 and this whole perverse sex cult, the synagogue of Satan, the cabal. So if you really want to know the truth, it's out there, but you're not going to find it in this propaganda piece. One of the things they say in there a lot is this about Horus and about all of these fallen angels, because they say, well, see, Christ is just a regurgitation of all of these other pagan gods, cobbled together. But that antichrist philosophy of the fallen angels it only works on people who have no knowledge of the Bible. That's why they banned the Bible from public education. That's why they banned the Ten Commandments. They banned prayer from school. They banned everything pertaining to the true God. So when they preach this garbage, this propaganda to people, people believe it because they don't know the Bible. They've never read the Bible. They were brought up through re-education camps that banned, literally, legally banned the Bible with Supreme Court rulings, forbidden in the re-education camps, in the indoctrination system that we call public education. And most of us came up in that system too. And that's why we didn't believe it. And that's why we got led astray by all this junk until we actually did pick up a Bible and read it. And we were like, oh, now we see that everything we were taught was inverted. It's the exact opposite. It's not that the Bible is parroting all this stuff from these pagan religions. It's that the pagan gods are the fallen angels described in the Bible. That's why all of their architecture and from every fallen angel is similar, and they all have elements of what they saw in heaven before they fell. They all talk about it. So they are in fact talking about Christ. You guys know I've done the Egyptian Book of the Dead and how it says that they're dead. They're cast down into the underworld. They're cut off from God. So if you read their pagan texts with understanding, you see the reason why they say a lot of what the Bible says is because these are the fallen angels. And they came down and enslaved humankind. And you can see their monuments, their pyramids on every continent in every pagan culture. And the Bible says verbatim in Genesis 6 that these fallen angels took human women and mated with them and created these Nephilim hybrids, these Raphaim, which, ancient mythology, we're told it's mythology, called the demigods and such. So the fact that all of these pagan religions have the story of virgin births, basically these gods taking humans and mating with them, right here, straight out of the Holy Bible. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. That's not proof that the virgin birth of Jesus Christ is just a regurgitation of these pagan texts. That's proof that the Bible's true. Okay, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but the point is that Zeitgeist movie and the Zeitgeist movement that are directly linked to the Willamette Valley Dream Survey, that movement was launched at exactly the same time as the This Man phenomenon. So back in 2006, 2007, 2008, that's when they started distributing the Zeitgeist propaganda movie, and they launched this whole Zeitgeist movement. It was at the exact same time that they started tinkering with broadcasting into our brains with these delta waves, D-wave quantum computers and all of this. And in fact, right in between the This Man delta wave, D-wave dream survey that ended or started being covered up around 2010 to 2012, and then the Willamette County dream survey that started again in 2015, right in that gap, there started being reported all of this other electronic harassment. Instead of just during sleep or dream state, people on the West Coast started reporting that they were having intrusive outside thoughts, words, attacks from somebody who was hacking into their brain. And I point this out all the time, but it's so interesting that in that whistleblower video that I posted back in 2017, where that guy who worked for that security company that was in a contract with Amazon, yes, Bezos, DARPA, Amazon, that they were doing frequency experiments on unwitting citizens in entire cities or like over entire city blocks. That's what the whistleblower was saying. And many of these experiments were done in Seattle and Portland. So I think that's especially interesting that right now that's where we see the most of this Marxist youth uprising with Antifa and them occupying and tearing down and all of this stuff that we've been talking about that goes along with cabal philosophy. The places that we see the most people uprising under that philosophy appear to be in these same areas where years and years and years ago these Marxist cults had begun testing and broadcasting over, entire areas. In fact, if you just go and type in frequency experiments or frequency, something like that, onto my channel, you can get tons of videos on all of these different beta tests all around the world. But one of the side effects that I mentioned in this whistleblower video on the screen here was these birds falling out of the sky, because much of this technology is microwave transmission, like we're talking about with the 5G and stuff. So it's odd. I know they would say the two things just aren't related at all, these animal die-offs everywhere, but I would say that it borders on evidence that in these same areas, thousands and even hundreds of thousands of birds just fall out of the sky with bleeding organs, like they've been put in a microwave or something. So, and this is happening all around the world all of a sudden. And I believe it to be a side effect of the use of these covert technologies. In Portland, I think they had, what was it, blackbirds or crows, something like that, just fell out of the sky over Portland. And this study seemed to be conducted on, or I guess I should say, this group of victims all seemed to be from one type of community. It was a gay community out on the West Coast. And these electronic harassments were not just taunting them and saying terrible things to them, but they would even tell these people who their name was. So when these people ended up coming together to these groups, they could compare stories and they would say, Pam, her name was Pam. The person who was doing this to me told me her name. It was almost like they were broadcasting a specific name in the voice to skull beta tests, like they were broadcasting a specific image in the delta wave broadcast, because then they could gather specific data. It's not just like, oh, somebody's hearing voices or somebody's hearing thoughts or somebody, that might be misconstrued, but people reporting hearing a specific name, so they know that the broadcast did go through. It wasn't just a delusion or something like the medical community tried to write it off as. These people were being attacked by the same person by name a lot of times when they began being targeted in this beta test, in this covert project. Allegedly, in my opinion. I shouldn't have to say that, but I do have to say it now. Everything that I say on my own vlog is obviously my own opinion and only my opinion.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR 6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain?
It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination. This is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
Only time I ever had a whole sentence, he said, "This is not about you," which just frosted me. If it's not about me, what the hell am I going through all this for? The first thing that was said was Randall Ringer. And I sat up straight and I went to into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror. Looked myself in the eyes and I said, did that really happen?
Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. In Johnson Valley, a Freedom House just opened to help people who believe they are being targeted.
To many of you who find yourselves the object of covert harassment, that there is hope and that you are not alone, and that we are striving to find legislation and we're working towards freedom for all.
Derek Robinson leads a national group called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials.
So if you zoom out and do sort of a long-term view of what the people out on the West Coast, out on the communist coast have been going through, then it looks like a progression of events. In the early 2000s, up to say 2006, 2008, to where they dropped the cover story and stopped the project around 2010, 2012, they had this study where they were broadcasting images but only in a specific frequency range. And if you go back to the This Man website and read the dream reports, it's a recurring theme that they'll say, he never spoke. We saw his image, we saw him there, but he never said anything. He never spoke. So it appears that they were able to broadcast the image, but they didn't have sound. And if you've watched my series on the dimensions and about how the dimensions, the octaves, are overlaid to where our 5 senses are literally picking up 5 different frequency ranges. So we are actually perceiving 5 dimensions, and then our brain integrates those into one perceived reality. But we are living in 5 dimensions simultaneously already. So it seems that since our audible range is a different frequency range than our visible range, that they were in one quantum dimension broadcasting, and they were able to relay images through our brain. So then around 2010 to 2012 is when those people started reporting the voice to skull out there, and they were not receiving images, but only voices. Then in 2015, the Willamette Valley Dream Survey pops up, and it's a combination of both. It's not just, have you seen this man or have you heard this woman? Have you been having strange dreams? They're investigating a recent spike in bizarre, unexplained dreams. Give your report here. And like I said, that dream survey was still going on right up till 2019 and 2020. And that brings us to the final 2. The one in Utah and the one in Canada. Here's the sign that was found in Utah. This is called the Happy Valley Dream Survey. And the Happy Valley region is Salt Lake City and that area. Need I say more? Also in 2020, the flyers started showing up in Canada as well. But I'm not going to show a picture of that one, although I have it in my file, because I fear that the number on it is somebody's number, that it might just be a prank, a copycatter to get everybody to call the number. So I'm just keeping that in my file. I'm not going to discuss that one in this video. In fact, I'm not going to discuss this Happy Valley Dream Survey very much. At present, I think it really might just be an ARG or a LARP or something, but I want to talk about a few of the strange things associated with it, just because this is an open file, and if anybody has any information on this, please forward it to me. This whole thread of investigation I can only trace back to about 2019, so it's fairly new, and it could still lead somewhere. So this is the first of any of the things I've discussed in this video that you get a response from. All the rest of them were one-sided, but this one in particular, which is what makes me think that it is an ARG, when you do call the number and you leave your dream report, then you will immediately get a robocall text back, just a confirmation text that says, thank you for leaving your report. Then your phone rings about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's what everybody reports. Around, it's not exactly, but around 3 a.m. Again, another red flag that it's an ARG. But also sort of cultish, right? So I'm keeping an eye on it. And the text is always a string of numbers and letters that seems to be gibberish. So for example, when NextPro tested it, the code he got was 9Go5JIT. And when he typed it in, it actually translated to a date in Haitian Creole, September 5th. So what does everybody do, of course? You're going to type September 5th into the search engine. And when you do that, then the 5 September 2020 Reddit community pops up, which is all about sort of doomsday dreams. One of the strange things I found about that community was that it was created on November 4th of 2019, and that date, November 4th, just keeps popping up again and again. Like when the anarchist, Marxist, Antifa group blocked the interstate out on the West Coast, holding up signs that it begins on November 4th. But the posts in the September 5 Reddit community are all over the place. They don't seem to be part of, any group. It's just lots of people in there talking. But a couple of the themes that stuck out was this continued talk about the sixth realm, a dream dimension called the sixth realm. Now, we were talking about our five senses being the five dimensions, and they keep talking about this sixth realm. And, I've talked about the sixth sense and all of that. And like I said, although at present I don't put any stock in this and I just think it's an ARG, and September 5th of 2020 has already come and gone. These were three more things I found interesting in the community. One is that they continually talk about this man in blue flames. So instead of Jordy Rose or this man, now there's the man in blue flames that keeps telling them stuff and giving them advice and things like that. The other thing is the significance of the number 24. They all talk about 24 and sign off 24. And I think that's interesting because that is when the second total solar eclipse crosses the United States of America, which just happens to be 7 years after our last total solar eclipse, the Great American Eclipse, right? And the Bible talks specifically about a 7-year tribulation period that is broken in half, a 3.5-year section and a 3.5-year section. So that could put us around the time period that we are in right now, that started in 2020, which 2020 was pretty weird, right? And the last thing I really saw in there that I thought might at all be worth mentioning is that they were talking about this date, May 3rd, 2021, that is supposed to be a world enlightenment. Like they're going to flip the switch and this world enlightenment is going to happen. And in light of what we've been talking about in the Titan Point series and Elon Musk putting the Starlink system above us for the Li-Fi system and the neural implants and all that, that they are working toward this time where they can, turn the earth into a smart city, basically. So I thought that was at least worth mentioning, that they were talking about something like that on this May 3rd, 2021 date. So I don't know if those are puzzle pieces to anybody else. Like I said, at present, I don't feel like this one is related to the stuff I was talking about earlier, the CIA beta tests. So there it is. That's all I really wanted to say about this topic presently. It's an open file. If you have any information you think might be valuable, let me know. And if you're new to this channel and you just stumbled across this video because you're interested in the this man phenomenon, what we're talking about here is what the Bible calls lying signs and wonders. That there is a mimic, an antichrist mimic, a technocracy that are trying to create this world system, this AI singularity to mimic God's omniscience and omnipresence and all of this type of stuff. It's very complex, and that's what the channel is about. But I wanted to point out, if you're watching this type of material for the first time, to wake up and be aware. You got to be on your game, because they have incredible technology and they are using it to deceive us. They are hiding the truth from us. In 2 Thessalonians 2:9, it says that this technology is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. In Matthew 24:24, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should even deceive the very elect. So you're going to need the Holy Spirit discernment. You don't want to end up a false prophet who's having dreams and visions and you can't tell the difference between this man and Jesus Christ, or the man in blue flames and Jesus Christ. You're going to need the Holy Spirit to make it through these end times, because they are creating an antichrist, a mimic of Christ. And like the Bible says, they are so cunning that if it were possible, they would even deceive the elect, but it is not possible. Because if you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, you know the difference. And he gives you a heads up. And the Holy Spirit literally runs interference for you. Frequency interference. He blocks the signal. He blocks the signal so that you can have clarity of mind. So if you have not already, please call on Jesus Christ today and ask him to receive his Holy Spirit into you, to receive Jesus Christ into yourself, a living spirit, so that you will be sealed and protected and saved from what is coming on the whole earth. You guys get saved. There's a link down below in the description box to a prayer page. If you're not saved already, please go there today, because they're already doing this crap today. I love you guys. God bless you and your families.